My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. This week, I'm back looking slightly like Steve Jobs / an Uber driver again, and I'm talking all about vulnerability. I know that on this show, I've talked about hustle culture, burnout, mental health, and a lot of pretty personal things. But this week, I really wanted to dive deep into vulnerability. I know at points I can feel incredibly vulnerable. And this is not just now. This has been for a lot of points in my life. I think as entrepreneurs, we often receive this public image that we are meant to aspire to be. And I'm not even going to name any names here, but I'm sure that a few spring to mind. When I think of being an entrepreneur and a CEO, I think of someone who's able to work ridiculously long hours. I think of someone that's able to be incredibly consistent in their motivation and their mood and being a leader and being positive and all these things. They're almost unwavering to a fault because they are the leader for everyone to look to and to follow. So, they just have to stay the course with that. I feel like, again, another stereotype is they could travel the world, they're going to conferences, they might be speaking. And so they seem to plane hop, and it's one red-eye flight after another, and then delivering a big speech to rapturous applause, and then jumping on a flight back home, getting no sleep, and then somehow going to a meeting when they get back. When I think of an entrepreneur and a CEO, I think, this is someone who is almost infallible. And I know that to be ludicrous, but equally, it becomes like subconsciously ingrained because of a lot of the content that's out there on social media, maybe. And so what ends up happening is you feel like you don't measure up. You feel like you're not good enough. And you get imposter syndrome big time, where you're like, well, maybe I'm not a real entrepreneur. Maybe I'm not a real CEO. Maybe I'm a fraud. And I think a big part of this is vulnerability. My vulnerabilities, perhaps incorrectly, I often view as weaknesses. And one of these might be my need for sleep, because I feel like as the CEO, as the entrepreneur here, I should be the one who's able to run on less sleep. I should be the one who can be here working at 4 a.m. in my office and just be able to get by on passion alone and all that kind of thing. But Marco, who's behind the camera as ever, he's told me that he can... How many hours sleep do you need, Marco? 4 or 5. I thought you were going to say 5 or 6. 4 or 5 hours. And that's crazy to me, because if I get 6.5, I'm like a toddler that didn't get their sleep. I can't function. Like, I don't operate. If I get less than 6, like, forget it. My day's a write-off. But I feel like Marco and many other people can get by on less. And they just seem to be able to power through. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's just my genetic makeup, but I've never been able to do it. I remember being a kid, and if I went to a friend's birthday party and, all the lads like stayed up chatting and like laughing all night and pulled an all-nighter, then I'd feel wrecked for a week, even as a kid. Same thing at university. If I ever pulled an all-nighter with an essay, I wasn't really one of these people that could bounce back that easily. That kind of sucks. That's something I have to reconcile with. And you might be watching or listening to this thinking, well, 8 hours sleep's recommended. But I know plenty of people. Like, one of my business partners is the type that I just described. And this is not social media hyperbole. I've literally seen him get either no sleep or like an hour or two sleep and go and lead an important corporate meeting and smash it. Whereas if I did that, I would literally fall apart. And so having to come to terms with vulnerabilities like that, like I say, it can be really quite hard, where you're just like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this stuff. And it isn't just sleep. I feel like it is just a consistency game. Maybe if I have a bad day or an unproductive day, again, I'm thinking of the people that seem to cram everything in. Some of the people that I follow, I know they're like jumping from 15-minute meeting to 15-minute meeting back to back to back for their entire day. And I've tried that at points, but when I do that, that completely wipes me out. I find it a lot more easy to kind of have a few meetings, a few calls, and sit and actually get on with my work. If I'm pulled in all directions constantly, again, it just burns me out incredibly quickly. I've talked on this show about how I really bought into hustle culture, and I kind of lived that, and I did 18-hour days and all that kind of thing. But that was not like a natural fit for me. So when I was doing that, we hired our first person 10 months in. And when she came on board, it wasn't even like I was this adrenaline fueled genius who was like firing on all cylinders and doing a great job. When she came on board, I could barely have a conversation with her because I was such a wreck. I don't think I've ever told you this, Marco, but literally she came on board and I was speaking like I was paralytically drunk. I was honestly so bad that she would be like, "Hi, morning," and I'd be like, "Hi," like I couldn't formulate words. And I think that is like, other people might be there cracking on with that much sleep, but like it really, really messed me up. I guess some days I don't know where to go with it. Like feeling these vulnerabilities, feeling these weaknesses, I either have to accept them and kind of recognize the good and be like, well, I am achieving X, Y, Z. I'm not an imposter. I know a lot of people kind of message me and say, how do you fit it all in? And you know, they're almost impressed with some things I'm doing, but what they don't see is like the shit days, and they don't see when I feel like I'm kind of underperforming versus even some people on my team at points where I'm like, well, they're having a better day than I am. I guess what I'm saying is that at a lot of points, I feel like I just can't keep up mentally and physically with other people in my space, especially the people I look up to. And that's a pretty shitty feeling. And I'll be honest, with a lot of these people who I look up to and I follow, some of my favorite content of theirs is where they show their vulnerabilities off. There was one guy who recently said something like, he definitely doesn't have it all figured out either. He's kind of figuring it out and making it up as he goes along, and we're all in the ride together. We're all on that same journey together. There was another guy I follow who kind of put his hands up and went, really, if you're looking at me and thinking I've got it all figured out, you're very, very fucking wrong, because I definitely don't, and I make mistakes and I crash and stuff like that. And that stuff, honestly, it feels like someone lifting a weight off of me, because I put so much pressure on myself, and I think we all do, right, when we're following these social media influencers and we're getting this one-sided dialogue from them. And it's not that I wish anyone else to have weaknesses or that I'm trying to tear them down, but honestly, it just makes me feel better about my own. And I think that's why I'm doing episodes like this. This is why I'm always trying to share my vulnerabilities. It's not to sit here and just have a fucking moan. It's because I hope it makes you feel better about your own, because we've all got them. And even though I know that to be true, I still feel shitty myself playing this comparison game. I still feel shitty dwelling on my vulnerabilities. And so I think we all need to talk about them more. And the more we can share them and normalize them and not kind of paint this superhuman version of ourselves on social media just to stand out or depict a certain branded version of ourselves, the more we can be truly, truly authentic, I think that's going to be a much healthier thing. One bit of insight I'll give with this: no one really seems to have their shit together. I notice this more and more as we grow and we do business with bigger individuals and bigger companies. Often when you dig below the surface, it's a bit of a fucking mess, to be honest. People are having like horrendous HR issues in-house. They're dealing with all kinds of chaos. They often don't know what they're doing. Even very talented people, they have some very obvious standout flaws. And you don't really get to know this until you jump on a call with them, or you partner with them, or collaborate with them, or work with them in some way. And even then, I'm really only getting like that first interaction, and I'm able to pick up on this stuff. So I'm sure if I knew them personally, or I lived with them, or was, best friends with them, I would see a whole lot more of that stuff. And again, I have to kind of reassure myself and remind myself of that even these big, unfallible people, these perfect people out there, as soon as you do a bit of digging, it's not quite as glamorous and perfect as it appears to be from the outside. So again, I've talked about how this show is like self-therapy. I think I've almost just worked through my own issue there and given myself the answer, but I hope I've given it to you as well. If you're doing this with anyone online, if you're beating yourself up because you're not superhuman, because you have weaknesses and vulnerabilities, please remember, we all do. It doesn't make you any less of an entrepreneur. It doesn't make you not an entrepreneur. It makes you pretty normal. So I hope that we are together able to internalize that mantra and feel a bit better about ourselves. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time. Hey podcast listeners, so when I recorded the episode about vulnerability, I think my head was kind of a bit frazzled after a long day, and I feel like I didn't cover the crux of what I was trying to talk about. So I'm in my car right now, talking on my phone. This is like a little bonus clarity to this episode. And I guess the heart of what I was talking about is that in many ways, I've always felt kind of weak, vulnerable in some senses. I know for the majority of my life, when I was younger, I was underweight. When, for example, I went to music festivals, there was dudes in our group who were getting up after a long night, drinking beer in the middle of this field at 7 a.m. I feel like even when I was younger, if I did that, it would just kill me. And that's played out, I've always kind of been hit pretty hard by hangovers, like hit pretty hard by colds, all that kind of stuff. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not genetically gifted to be the hardest worker in the room, or the biggest hustler, or the biggest entrepreneur, or anything like that. I often get more tired than some people, more sick than some people. I'm not saying I'm a wreck, but I'm definitely not like the standout in my group of friends where it's like I can get anything fucking done. And so I guess my message that I wanted to put across in this episode is, if I can do it, and I'm definitely not genetically predisposed to this life, if I can do it and I can grind it out and I can build a company and I can be this consistent in content, then I really believe that you can too, because it's not just that I landed on my feet and this stuff comes easy to me. In many ways, I feel like I have to fight my nature. I have to fight my own genetics to get this stuff done. But dedication and drive and passion get you a really fucking long way. So if you're feeling like you're not Superman or not Superwoman, me neither. And I think we're all capable of going after what we want. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys